Well, I think I always saw this ultimately as Joe's coming of age. The reason we were right here was not just because that's when Elizabeth comes. So I think that has a lot to do with it because she's the same age as he is now and also the same age as Gracie was then. That's why she's playing this role. So there's sort of this intersection.
Today on the We Need to Talk About Oscar podcast, I'm joined by May December's first-time Oscar-nominated screenwriter, Samy Burch, who developed the story with her husband, Alex Mechanik. Hi, Samy. How is it going?
Great. Thank you for having me.
The annual Academy Awards Nominees Luncheon took place just last night, where they usually take the infamous class photos. I saw you both in it, and needless to say, very classy. Did you have any special or memorable encounters with any of the other attendees last night, like Messi, the dog who played Snoop in Anatomy of a Fall?
I didn't meet the dog, though I saw him, and he's a very beautiful dog. It was really fun. I was at Sandra Hüller was at my table, and I mean, in the picture you can see I'm standing right next to Thelma Shoemaker, Scorsese's editor, legendary editor, and then Pam Koffler, the producer of May December, also is nominated for Past Lives. That's their first nomination, Christine Michon and Pam. So that was really nice, especially because the way they do that class photo is really seems pretty random. We were being called up in a random order that wasn't alphabetical, and then you'd kind of get down there and they'd kind of go, okay, you over there, you over there. So it was funny that Pam and I ended up next to each other, and it was very exciting. It was a really pretty surreal event to be in a room with such company.
May December got a lone screenplay nomination, which is, by the way, a shame. But how has this whole campaigning experience been for you? And has it helped that you can go through all these with Alex as a married couple?
I mean, it's been a really exciting and strange. And I just keep thinking of how difficult it must be for people that don't have like the best group in the world. Like I felt like we've had the best group, like Todd and Natalie and Julianne and Charles and, all our producers and everyone at Netflix. Everyone has been so just funny and easy and smart. And it's been so ideal because it is a lot. It's a lot of travel. There's a lot of like, especially for people that maybe are more introverted, which I think I am, it's a lot of talking to people. So I cannot imagine doing that on a movie where like the movie stars hate each other or like or some drama within the ranks, because this has just been mainly so fun. Especially because I visited set. I was there for like 4 days. I was not on set with them in Savannah, even though it was a pretty short shoot. And so this is really where I've had the most time hanging out with everybody in this group. And it has been very fun.
Did you know, by the way, that there are not one or two, but 6 couples nominated for Oscars this year?
Yes.
Together?
I did. I saw that. It's really interesting. I know it's great. I'm trying to think if I've met the other couples. Not full couples yet, but I think I'll probably run into some of them.
Yeah, I'm sure. And now on to your writing journey. We usually like to ask our guests about their core memories that either made them fall in love with films in general or made them go, yeah, well, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Do you have a moment or time in your life which you can recall and attribute one of these feelings, these decisions to?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a very movie centric household. And my dad, especially, is one of those people that kind of has an encyclopedic knowledge of film. And from a very young age, he was like 10 years old, sending away for like, little reels of silent films in the 60s. He was like writing PO boxes for like lost silent comedies. So that was always just a big part of our life and education, my sister and I growing up. And I think it's interesting to think when it really started focusing on writing. I can think of there was a movie that I really loved when I was 11 or 12 called A Thousand Clowns with Jason Robards and Barbara Harris. And it was written by a playwright named Herb Gardner. It was a play and then it became a movie, and it was very meaningful to me. And I remember getting the play, like the Samuel French copy of the play, and reading that over and over. And there's such a distinctive voice that he has as a writer in his dialogue. There's like such a recognizable rhythm. And I think that was probably a turning point. And then I started writing plays in high school that my friends would be in. And then I went to college for screenwriting. So I kind of made that decision early, and then it just took a lot longer to actually have a job get as a screenwriter, actually that to be my career. But yeah, I think something I just responded to it very early.
And what's your writing process like? And regarding your work with Alex, since you developed this story together, do you two have any major, or if not major, at least notable dissimilarities between each other's approach and maybe way of tackling different segments of the job?
I mean, yeah, Alex went to film school and I think kind of has a more holistic way of being. Whereas I really primarily consider myself a writer. So the process for this, which is basically the process I have had with everything before and since, but then just included Alex, is that we'll get an idea and write notes about it and kind of chew on it for a while, and then create an outline that's fairly sparse. I don't go overboard, and a lot of time that's with note cards, and that's what we did together. We thought of the idea together and separately had thoughts about it, and then outlined on the wall of our old apartment just with note cards. And then from there, I'll transcribe that into like a document, and I will write character biographies of the leads, and sometimes the supporting characters, just for me, just to feel clear, and kind of sort of sometimes like a voice will emerge in that writing. And then I just write. I mean, it's for the first draft, I just write chronologically and go down the outline. And I'm someone that needs a deadline. I'm not. I don't have the kind of like disciplined. Oh, I'll wake up. I'll write 5 pages before dawn. I need some sort of momentum. I've gotten better about it, but for a long time it always was self-imposed. Now, thankfully, there are more real stakes, but I can leave things to last minute. I can write in the middle of the night. I'm like that. I'm like, I wouldn't recommend it. So that was basically the process until then. We got producers, and then Todd and Natalie, who's also a producer on the film, where then it became, they would give beautiful notes, and then I would go and work on the script and send a draft back to them, and so forth. It was all very organic and natural. And Alex and I have made shorts in the past, and so we just have kind of an easy way about the working together. And no, I don't think. I mean, I think our approaches are only different the work that's primarily his. Like he's about to shoot his first feature that he's directing. And we did the story together. So we did that same process. And now he likes to shoot things with a lot of improv. So his script is sort of a script/treatment, like I think similar to like what Curb Your Enthusiasm does. So his whole, everything that he'll do with that, I think, yeah, speaks to kind of certain spontaneity that he really loves. And then, yeah, but this is, besides our shorts, this is the first time we've worked together in this way. And the rest has been, we have our separate things.
In the case of characters like these, like here in May, December, with such layered personalities and emotional capacities, what comes first? More precisely, their emotions, their personalities, or an outline of them, or rather they just go hand in hand?
They do go hand in hand. I mean, I think you start with this idea of who's this about, what happens, to a basic degree, like what is the premise, and then a lot clarifies itself, and then I think it's a process of kind of getting to understand those characters more and more as you go. But that's why when I'm writing these little biographies, a lot of times it's of their whole life. It's kind of getting a scope of their history, things that were important to that. I don't ever plan, oh, what's this going to be? I just start writing, and they sort of clarify themselves. I think once you can hear their voices, then it's a matter of, certainly in this movie in particular, a lot of these scenes really live in the subtext. I mean, there's so little honesty being said out loud. So the tension of that you can feel when you're writing. And I think it mimics what the audience feels of this sort of discomfort. But I think, some things come as a surprise and some things can't really be known, especially in the case of this movie. I think it hinges on that we can't fully know Gracie and her character, like in her deep depths. But yeah, it's an interesting process to try to even talk about, really, to articulate.
I actually watched 4 of your shorts this Sunday, and I'm gonna pull it up because I don't wanna butcher their titles. So I watched them in chronological order with Family Dinner, All You Can Eat, Bev, and then Crown Prince. These were the 4 I could find. I don't know whether I could have found more.
Yeah, there's some more like comedy. Family Dinner I consider like a sketch more than a short, but we did a lot of things like that with some of these comedians that we were like Kate Berlant, I've known since we were 12. She's an amazing comedian, and we just kind of were in New York at the same time as a lot of amazing comics, so we would do things for them. But yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah, and this is what I was gonna say, that they are quite funny with a great amount of cringe and uncomfortability, and then May December, in my eyes, switches up, and this uncomfortable feeling cuts way deeper. Was this a difference that you could actually feel or even aim for it?
Well, I mean, it's a few things. One is there's quite a leap between us, 23 or something, directing these shorts ourselves, and what Todd Haynes brings to any project. But I think as far as the writing, I mean, it really depends. To me, I think of Bev as the only real, like, written short. And there was a lot of improv within, we put on that beauty pageant live in front of an audience and just did it. And these girls had to do their talents, and they were really nervous, and someone won. And then we just picked what we liked from that. But then the rest was pretty written. I think there's also just something that's harder to capture in a smaller amount of time. I think maybe December is maybe my, I don't know, 10th or 11th feature script that I've written. And I always felt more comfortable in that format than in our shorts, even though I had a great time doing them. And I think it's so fun to work with actors, especially, we were lucky to get a lot of those people. But yeah, I think it's always that mix. I think I could see, I haven't seen Bev in a long time, but from what I remember, I can see moments that hint at a certain quality that I do see in May, December of like, there's some humor, but it's very disturbing and sad. Like Brandon Lee Mulligan, who plays that character, remember the scene where he's like selling off his dad's things and just this look comes over his face and it's so sad. So I think that's definitely been part of the goal for a while of mixing tones and hitting, as close to the bone as possible.
With quite success, I should add. Basically, Elizabeth is the eyes and ears of the audience throughout the film. How did the level or extent of Lizzie and the viewers observing together, only observing, and them basically getting involved or interfering, evolve throughout writing the story?
Well, I think that she starts as our eyes and ears. And then I think at a certain point we lose trust in her. And then I think at a certain point there is a way in which the audience feels potentially complicit in their interest or maybe in interests past of other stories and the way they've consumed them. But I think that's what's fun about that character is that, she really is coming in as she's our entry point and she is in some ways like the investigative journalist that would come into this town looking for truth, but she has no moral or ethical code. And I think around the pet shop time, I think we start to get a sense that we can't trust her or her actions or even her point of view, and it just becomes another person in the story that is not trustworthy or not honest with themselves, and I don't think she really has anything kind of too duplicitous that she's plotting. I think she's just in general a selfish person with a lot of self-doubt, and that's chaotic in its own way.
And it is obvious from the get-go that Natalie Portman's Elizabeth is going to completely disrupt the family's from the outside picture perfect, however quite unstable life. But the big question must have been the how. How did the different courses the Atherton U family story could take shape your approach to each character as an individual and their tale as a whole?
Well, I think I always saw this ultimately as Joe's coming of age. The reason we were right here was not just because that's when Elizabeth comes. So I think that has a lot to do with it because she's the same age as he is now and also the same age as Gracie was then. That's why she's playing this role. So there's sort of this intersection, but also because we're on this verge of the youngest kids graduating high school. So we're sort of, for the very first time since he was a child, he's about to be alone again in the house with Gracie. Or, that there's finally, he's done this, what was, I guess, a 20-something year stint of fatherhood that started as a forced fatherhood, but there wasn't much time, is the way I see it, to analyze or look, or it wasn't safe emotionally for him to do any of those things. So I think it's those two things colliding that really is causing just what I see as the beginning shift. We don't really get to see, I think it's hinted at at the end of the film, but this shift in the way that he's able to look at his life and these walls that have been built up. I mean, they all have incredibly high walls, but some of them are built willfully and some of them are protective. And I think his is one that I think Elizabeth knocks some bricks down. I think, his is one that the wall needs to come down.
Major point of the film is how people can cross different lines, or how they dance around them, and how far they can push them and each other. And at the point, even Elizabeth talks about the possibility of the disappearance of a line during filming sex scenes, or near the end when we see her practicing with the letter Gracie wrote Joe back in the day. The way I see it, this could easily apply to writing in general, how you delve into these morally gray characters and areas. What was the biggest danger, or maybe rather contradiction, you realized you were facing while writing the screenplay?
That's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of contradiction in it by design, in just that, in dealing with tabloid stories that are somewhat recognizable, or there have been a lot of cases that are really familiar, especially in the US. And there's a way in which this is a very scathing commentary of true crime. And yet it was important to me to also, I mean, while these are fictionalized characters or fictional characters, that to give the interior life and the intimate moments a real humanity, to kind of honor that, and especially with Joe, really feel that we know him and we see him. And there's a contradiction in those two things. I mean, I think it's the same as that there is a contradiction in the two tones. And I don't know that I necessarily see them as two clean tones. I think they're constantly bleeding into each other. But
Yeah.
there is the satire, there is sort of a sinister humor, kind of indictment in Hollywood and actors and all of that, and audience and everything. But then I think there is a sympathy or a humanity that I hope comes through. And I think in some ways it's easier to see both versions of the movie at almost like you could see a movie that's just this side, that's crueler and only funny, and no one was really given that interior space, or this is just a drama and it's deeply sad and tragic, which I think it is. But I think it's both of those things, and I do think that that's the battle always, is calibrating those two things.
Couple of times Gracie's manipulative personality surfaces, and you've already mentioned too how we can never really get to know the real her, but sometimes these little things pop up or just surface, like when she compliments her daughter for trying on the dress for graduation and planning on putting on a sleeveless dress that shows her whole arms despite the unrealistic beauty standards of her days. How did you find and bring out the right amount of, I don't know, not necessarily evil, but less appealing, or this overly kind side of her?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that in one way, that's a very common, I can't tell you how many women have come up to me about that scene. It's very universal in this certain way of mother, I think of daughters have said a lot about that, and fathers have said a lot about the scene on the roof. If I was adding some data to a chart, but I think it all ultimately comes from who Gracie is, what she values. I think there's this hyper femininity that she has weaponized. I don't necessarily think it's something she's doing consciously. I don't think that's the question with a lot of her behavior, is how much of it is conscious and how much of it is natural. But I think with that, with the baking, with the flower arranging, with, these sort of traditional sweetie pie pursuits, it's also about being small. It's about being delicate. She's picking on her son because who seems of average, there's nothing sickly about him, but she seems fixated on wanting him to look strong and be big and healthy. And her daughters, yes, to be small and graceful. And so I think that is sort of just a natural extension of her voice. And within that scene, I think she probably would say that anyway. And that's her duplicitous way of speaking, of complimenting you. And that's also very Southern, taking you down a peg. But she's saying to Elizabeth also, oh, I heard you met my ex-husband and you didn't tell me about that. And so there's a way in which I see the arms thing almost as being like a gangster movie where you're having a disagreement with one guy and you shoot this other guy in the foot just to show, look what I'm capable of. I'll cut you down. So that I think moves the scene forward, as well as just being this very act of cruelty. And I think Elizabeth, who plays the daughter, is so amazing in the movie, but you really see it on her face of how we're all pretending too. She's pretending she's okay, and it's her decision to take the dress off. But so I think it functions in both ways. So that's where I think that's how I would determine it. Like these levels of manipulation or cruelty is, what is she trying to do in the scene? What is actually her goal, and what comes natural to her in her voice.
And now that we are talking about lines that are mentioned multiple times, there are those that have gone viral, quite viral, like the one with not enough hot dogs, or Lizzie's after sex sentence, this is just what grown-ups do.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite while writing, or when you could finally see it on the big screen, or you don't play favorites?
There are definitely lines that I really like. I could never have imagined the hot dog. Like if right before it premiered, I'd seen the film a few times, and if I had to have guessed, I wish I wrote it down, what lines people would have said. I've been surprised. I mean, I love that line on the roof. And there are some that I don't feel like I've heard people say that much, but that is the fun part of like looking at, like, especially Letterboxd. I do look at that, and it is amazing how many different lines people will, they'll start their review, or that'll just be their review. And that is really cool. I also love Netflix made hats promotion, and they say insecure people are very dangerous. That's a good hat. But yeah, I've been surprised. It's obviously just a dream come true to see a line you wrote on a hat. Well, yeah, period.
This was your first script that was made into a film and got a theatrical plus streaming release, directed by the one and only Todd Haynes, starring Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, and Charles Melton. I believe this would be quite a boost for your career, one must say. What could be next for you? Are you going to take some time off, or maybe ride this well-deserved wave of success?
It's been very huge. I mean, the big shift probably where I started thinking from before of where it was, writing scripts in my apartment for no one, to, oh, okay, things are happening here, was probably the day Natalie Portman said she wanted to play this part. And that was before Todd was, she was the one who sent it to Todd. But yeah, I wrote another film since that was made there's been a lot of drama because it's the studio.
Yeah, I didn't really want to mention Coyote versus Acme, but
it's okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's looking sort of grim, but I'm hoping it doesn't get put in a box for the rest of our lives. That'd be really horrible. But so that was a very different movie and a really interesting experience. And I've written some other things that I'm in the process now. I'm working again with Killer Films on a film. We just got a great director, and we're hoping to find a lead actor soon. Hopefully that will be maybe public knowledge at some point. And I'm very excited about that. And I'm trying to be really thoughtful of what is next. You know, I have some things at various stages, but yeah, I'm not going to go to the mountains and rest. Unfortunately, not yet. But it's been an exciting time.
Yeah. Well, Samy, thank you for taking the time and joining us on the show. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm really rooting for you.
Thank you. It's really, really nice to meet you. Talk to you.
Bye.
Bye.